I've been a job seeker in Germany several times before. I think it's about 3 times, in fact. That means I have some advice from my own job applications to give, and I've put together a whole bunch of points that I wanted to bring up as maybe something that could help you. But before I get to that, I wanted to tell you about my own job search stories. So when I arrived in Germany, I wanted to make a career change. And this is one of the greatest things about starting a new life in a new country, is that it's a great chance to try and reinvent yourself. You can do it on a personal level, but you can also do it on a professional level. And at that time, I'd been in a job in Johannesburg that had been soulless for me for many years. I was fairly good at it, but I wanted to do something more creative. I'd studied marketing. I wanted to move in that direction. And when I moved to Germany, I thought to myself, this is the opportunity to finally move into something more creative and move away from the more business stuff that I was doing previously. The problem is, though, you can't be too picky about the jobs when you're applying in a new country. So what I did was I applied for the jobs that I really wanted, those creative type of marketing jobs and other kinds of jobs. But I also applied for jobs in the same field as I'd been before. And I also applied for other jobs in between, just in the hope that I would get something. And one of the jobs I printed out and put it on my desk, but it said in the job specification that they wanted someone who had fluent German. So I'd kind of written that one off in my mind, and I thought, I'm not even going to bother with that one. And eventually it passed the deadline date, and at some point during my job search, I just got so desperate that I kind of looked at that lying on my desk, and I thought, you know what the hell? I'll put together a covering letter, I'll send them my CV, and who knows what could happen. And guess what? They wanted me for an interview. So I was, first of all, surprised that it was past the apply by date and that I didn't have fluent German, and I was very open and honest about that. And they still wanted to see me for an interview, and it was very exciting. The interview was in Frankfurt. I got dressed up in trousers, which I never do, and a jacket and a tie. I was like fully interview mode, going to a very large company in Frankfurt, and off I went on the train. I was living in Schweinfurt at the time, and it's about a 3-hour train drive from Schweinfurt to Frankfurt. And some point on that trip, I don't know exactly when it happened, but I was sitting in the train, going through my notes. I'd studied up on the company. I'd done my research online, and I was sitting in the train, and I looked down for some reason, and I saw my trousers right in the crotch area had been completely ripped open. I have no idea where this happened or how it happened. It wasn't like that when I left home. So at some point I ripped my trousers and didn't even know that I'd done it. And I was on the way to one of the biggest interviews of my life. I had said, if I don't get a job within a year, I'm leaving Germany. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go to the interview with ripped pants. So it was very difficult sitting in an interview knowing that my pants were ripped. And as it was, I was sitting very prone, so I just crossed my legs, and I had to remember not to uncross them because it would be a bit like that Basic Instinct scene with Sharon Stone, where she kind of like, I'm not sure that would have gotten me the job. Let's put it that way. I had bright red underwear on that day, so it would have been fairly noticeable. So it's difficult to have something like that on your mind at the same time as trying to impress people in an interview. But that was what happened with my first real job interview at a big company in Frankfurt. And somehow, I got the job. It was amazing. So that was my first job. That was me getting my first job, and it was as a technical writer, which was more in line with the field that I wanted to move into, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. But it was, I've always considered myself to be a good writer, so it was at least moving in the general direction of where I wanted to go. I worked at that company for 9 years. I had a great time. I met some people that I'm still friends with today. It was a very international company, and it was really the perfect landing spot for me as an expat, still learning German. And that experience was incredible. And then I applied for a second job in Germany, which I was also fortunate enough to get. As I mentioned earlier, it was at a smaller startup. And finally, not so long ago, I made a third job change and completely changed careers to content marketing, which is something that is way, way more suited to what I want to do and who I am as a person. So it's been a great journey here in Germany, and it's provided me with opportunities that I might not have had had I stayed in Johannesburg. I don't know. It could have been that I stayed in the same career that I was in. I'd already built up some experience. I had some contacts. And it could have been that I just remained there forever. So it was a good opportunity moving to Germany to really branch out and reinvent myself and land up where I am now. So through my 3 interviews, I gathered some experience about searching for jobs. So here are some of my points about finding work in Germany. I'm just going to throw them out there, and I hope it helps someone out there. Keep trying is one of the biggest bits of advice that I have. In the beginning, my job applications were literally disappearing into the void. I wasn't even getting rejections, which is kind of even worse. I would have preferred to get rejections, but I was just getting nothing. So I wasn't even sure that my email was working. I was just hearing nothing. And yet I still kept on sending the applications out. And then, as I said, one of them eventually came back. And I found that later on, maybe it was because I had more experience on my CV or my German was better, but I had better luck when I sent out my CVs. But at that point in time, it was at least a 3-month period or a 4-month period where I wasn't getting any response whatsoever. So keep trying. My next bit of advice is if a job description specifies that they want fluent German as well as English, but you don't have your German up to speed, just enter anyway. What have you got to lose? The worst case scenario is they write back and say, no, sorry, we need fluent German. The job ad for my first German job, as I said, the reason I almost didn't apply for it was that it said German was a necessity. So I just almost didn't apply. And in the end, it didn't matter. And I got the job. So just try it anyway. Especially if you're desperate, just send those applications out. Another thing that I can suggest is write a different cover letter for each job that you apply to. And why I say that is that they need to see that you've specifically tailored your application to that job. It kind of makes it look like you want that job a bit more than if you're just sending out a generic cover letter. So acknowledge some of the things that were said in the job spec, and specifically, the cover letter is your place where you motivate why they should even consider taking a look at your CV. And now the cover letter can usually be the email that you send your application with, or it could be a separate Word document that you put in the email that you send. The point is just spend a bit of time tailoring it to that specific job spec. While I'm on the subject, the other thing that I can say was when you're writing your cover letter is be realistic. Be realistic about what you can do, what you can't do. When I applied for one of the jobs, I actually had a section in my cover letter saying why I am suited to this job and a paragraph titled why I might not be suited. And there I highlighted the things where I didn't have the experience that they were looking for. I didn't have a completely native speaker level of German. And I just wanted them to know for sure that that was what the situation was with me. So it felt kind of counterintuitive laying out my why they might not want to consider me. But the way I look at it is it's in the best interests of both parties. If they find that those things are not what they're looking for, they just don't invite me to the interview. They save themselves some time. They save me some time because I don't have to go and research the company some more and I don't have to prepare myself for an interview. So it's a win-win situation. So be realistic and honest in your cover letter. My next point. Big international companies are a good place for you to start with in Germany. They already have an international culture, and in many cases, they produce their internal communication in English. This is perfect. I know it's not perfect for people who might not have English as a native tongue, but even for people with other languages, quite often they have a very good level of English. So international companies are where it's at. Also, international companies have branches everywhere, and there are jobs requiring certain languages within that company. For example, they might be looking for a salesperson to deal with the Spanish-speaking countries. And if you're a Spanish speaker, that's kind of perfect for you, especially if you're in sales. So the big companies provide a lot of international opportunities and also don't necessarily require German or English. They might have opportunities for you to use your own native tongue. Another thing, and this is a big one, I mentioned it briefly before in this episode, but you need to have a LinkedIn and a Xing profile. Now, LinkedIn, you probably know, it's a massive career social media site. Xing is the German version of that. So it's a sort of a social media network for professionals, but it's German-based. Xing, Xing.de. You need to have a profile on both LinkedIn and Xing. And if you're not big on social media, it doesn't matter. If you're looking for a job in Germany, this is no time to exercise your anti-social media policy. This is the time to get a job. Once you have a job, delete the profiles. It's fine. But just while you're getting that job, have a good profile with your strengths, your experience, and it could even be that headhunters or companies searching for suitable people find you. And also when you're sending your CVs into companies, what a lot of them do is they check on LinkedIn and Xing.de to see if they can find your profile. And yeah, if they don't find you, it might not seem so professional. And you just want to give yourself every chance that you can. In line with something I mentioned earlier about being realistic, the same applies to interviews. I found that in interviews, Germans are not that into hyperbole. They just want to know the facts. And I find that an approach in an interview with a German company of less about trying to impress them per se, but rather just to discuss the position. Go in there with an open mind and say, hey, let's discuss this position. This is what I can do. This is my experience. And then you can find out more about the position itself and what the role entails. And it's more of a discussion, a two-way discussion. And I think that works far better in German interviews than going in there with a sort of, I'm going to impress you. This is why I'm so cool. Just tone it down a little, stick to the facts. And you also don't want to set yourself up for unrealistic expectations when you start the job. You don't want them to think that you're able to do things that you can't do. So just be realistic. And the best interviews I had were the ones where I thought that I wouldn't actually get the job. And I went in thinking, you know what? I'm just going to be honest and see what happens. And that worked, at least for me. But that's one of the things that I can kind of put forward as some advice. Next, you need to make an effort with the language. And this might mean that you start learning German a few months before you even start your job search. But it is crucial. Or maybe not crucial. You can find jobs maybe without it. And a lot of people do. But it just puts you at so much of an advantage if you can speak some level of German. Even if your German is not good, at least to be able to show that you're taking steps towards learning it. And this means maybe preparing by doing German courses at the A1 level. You won't be able to conduct the full interview at an A1 German level, but you can at least go in and show your intent. My first interview was in German, or at least it started in German, but it very soon switched later on once we got past all the things that I'd learned, which at that point was Guten Tag, wie geht es Ihnen und ich heiße schon. That was it, but at least I could see my pronunciation was good and I was in the process of learning the German. So by that phase, once they could see that, the interview kind of shifted over to English and it was fine, but it's important to be able to show that you are taking the initiative and learning German. About the interview process now. Usually there's an initial interview, and that one is usually with the direct line manager and involves the nitty-gritty discussion about your experiences and about the job. And quite often there's a second interview, but this is usually a formality, or at least I have the experience that the second interview, if you make it to the second interview, it's kind of just a formality, and there you'll probably be discussing the conditions, negotiating a salary, and so on. So second interview is good. I have had job applications which went to a third interview, and I had one job application which had what they called a Schnuppertag, where you got to spend a day at the company with your team. You maybe put through some tasks that you need to provide. Cheryl spoke a bit about that. So that could also be part of your interview process, but I only had that in one of the interviews that I went to. The other thing I can mention is you probably need to have a clear idea of what salary you'll be asking for before you get into the interview. It's a difficult thing. It's very, very difficult for expats, especially if you're not in Germany at the moment or you have no idea about what your peers are earning or what you should be asking for. You might be inclined to start quite low just so that you can become an attractive option for the job. But you really want to do your research about this and you want to do it before you get to the interview. So just kind of ask around on Facebook. I also saw there's a website called Live Work Germany. And I'm putting the link in the blog post as well. And they just started a new series about what you can expect to ask for specific careers. And I think that the first one that they've done is the tech field, what you can kind of ask for salaries for different jobs in the tech field. Check that out, Live Work Germany. There's some good information there.